opportunity to be able to speak to you about the work that we do. The last few years, as we have all seen before us, have been a challenging time for the global community. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, of conflict and climate change, and of economic insecurity have been felt by all of us. But those most vulnerable to these threats are refugees, people who have to flee their country and seek the protection of another. My organization, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or the UN Refugee Agency, has a mandate to protect people who have been forced to flee their homes, men, women, and children who, when they first cross an international border, or flee, for that matter, to another part of their own country. I am short. Were forced to flee to another part of their own country and become internally displaced, need life-saving aid. They need shelter, they need water, they need food. And then they need assistance to rebuild their lives, to give their children and their families hope for the future. Nearly 90 million people in the world today have been forced into situations like this. They have had to flee their homes, and the work that we have to do to support them, we can't do this alone. We need the global community across all the different sectors to work with us to do this work. 3 years ago, in the spirit of this approach, the United Nations General Assembly agreed a global compact on refugees. This is essentially a new deal for displaced people, and it calls on governments, the private sector, and civil society to come together to find new solutions, to ease the pressure on hosting countries, hosting communities, host refugees and internally displaced people, to help refugees become more self-reliant and resilient. The Global Compact explicitly links forced displacement with the Sustainable Development Goals, which are a set of, as you all know, I'm sure, 17 interlinked global goals designed to be a blueprint to achieve a better future for all of us. The SDGs were set up in 2015 and are intended to be achieved by 2030. This was a collaborative process. This is not the United Nations SDGs in that somehow all of us somehow working in the UN are tasked with taking it forward. As you all well know, it is our responsibility collectively. The goals include tackling poverty and hunger, achieving quality education and healthcare for all, gender equality, action on climate change, more sustainable cities, access to clean water and sanitation, clean and affordable energy, decent work and economic growth, investment in industry, innovation and infrastructure, and very importantly, partnerships to ensure that these goals are realized. One of the universal principles behind the agenda to achieve the SDGs by 2030 is to leave no one behind. In practice, leaving no one behind represents a commitment to eradicate poverty in all its forms, end discrimination and exclusion, and to reduce the inequalities and vulnerabilities that undermine the potential of each individual and humanity as a whole. That is why it's in all of our interests to achieve collectively sustainable development goals. In the private sector, environment, social, and corporate governance, or ESG as it's frequently referred to, reflects these broader objectives of sustainable development goals. ESG recognizes, of course, that more socially conscious decision-making can also have a positive effect on business. And today, when faced with the current challenge of forced displacement, the private sector has stepped up and continues to do so, to work with humanitarian organizations like the one I work for and development actors to address these interrelated challenges. They are delivering business know-how, financial backing, and including refugees and forcibly displaced people in their own workforces. Many businesses see that it is not just the right thing to do, but also the smart thing to do. That is because refugees can bring skills, resilience, and an eagerness to contribute to the workforce, qualities that are extremely valuable to employers and needed for stable, resilient communities across the planet. International financial institutions and development organizations have played a game-changing role in working towards the SDGs and the Global Compact on Refugees. They have brought expertise in poverty alleviation, data and analysis, and they have backed this up with billions of dollars in support to refugee hosting countries through a combination of grants and concessional loans. Regional financial institutions like the Islamic Development Bank and the African Development Bank have also made considerable contributions to supporting refugees and their hosting communities, which complement the investments of these development actors that we work with on the ground. I'm delighted to say that the global Muslim community has also risen to the challenges of achieving sustainable development goals and the Global Compact on Refugees. You don't need me to explain that welcoming the stranger is a vital tenet of the Islamic faith. This is being put into practice in the Muslim countries that today host over half of the world's refugees. Nearly 6 million Syrians have found sanctuary in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt. And Pakistan and Iran together host nearly 3 million Afghan refugees. At the end of March this year, UNHCR and the Islamic Development Bank launched the Global Islamic Fund for Refugees in Saudi Arabia. This is an innovative, sustainable, and Sharia-compliant fund that we hope will open new funding opportunities in support of millions of refugees, internally displaced people, and their host communities in Organization of Islamic Cooperation member states. We are extremely grateful for this much-needed support that has come about as a result of continued engagement with our Islamic philanthropy partners and their communities. Here in South Africa, we have seen the generosity of Islamic philanthropy in helping those who have been hit hard by the economic impact of COVID-19, as well as the most recent humanitarian disaster response to the KZN floods. Both your fellow South Africans and refugees, asylum seekers have received donations through Zakat contributions that have made all the difference to their ability to feed and support their families. Some of you may have had the opportunity to attend the launch of the Refugee Zakat Fund in South Africa during a virtual briefing before Ramadan last year. In addition to Zakat contributions, UNHCR has been humbled by the outflow of support from philanthropists and organizations, foundations through regular and long-term contributions through Sadaqah. The trust that our supporters have placed in the organization has inspired us to collaborate much more closely to develop even more creative Islamic financing tools. Last month, I was invited to an iftar at the Nizamiya Mosque in Johannesburg. It was incredible to witness there the welcome shown to people of other faiths, all coming together with a joint purpose of working towards social cohesion and supporting the most vulnerable in their communities. This is, in fact, the Global Compact on Refugees in action. This is the Sustainable Development Goals in action. So I would like to use this opportunity to urge you to think about ways to embrace and incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals in your respective industries, because it is in our collective interest to do so. When humanitarian needs around the globe are at an all-time high, the consequences of inaction can be alarming. However, I'm honored to be in the presence today of individuals who are in a position to make changes for the better. I very much look forward to hearing the exciting lineup of panelists who will be speaking at the conference. I know that together we can harness the commitment, passion, and innovation to rise to the challenge to create better business and a more sustainable society that leaves no one behind. Thank you for this opportunity and your time.
Thank you, Ms. Law. Before you leave, I just want to ask the delegates if there are any questions for Ms. Law. There are microphones in front, and if not, we'll then proceed. Can I have an indication? Is there anything that you'd like to know? You can possibly engage with her privately in one of the breaks as well. Thank you, Ms. Law. We appreciate your time. Thank you. Certainly raising some very important, pertinent issues here this morning, and I'm really hoping that some of the delegates here will engage with Ms. Law through the course of the day as well. We move ahead now with our second set of industry presentations, and this time around we turn our attentions to two companies. Delegates and members of two different companies will be speaking about the Nasr Impact Fund. And these two companies, Turning Point Capital and the Assist Group, are part of the sponsors as well of the event around the silver category. The two gentlemen, I'm not too sure if they'll be coming up individually or together, but I will be telling you a little bit about them. So first up is Daniel Lombard, the Executive Chairman of the Assist Group. Daniel Lombard has over 35 years of experience in structured property solution development, direct residential and commercial property investment, property management, residential, commercial sales and letting, property development, as I mentioned, mortgage origination and body corporate management. He has completed over 2,000 property investment unit sales of in excess of 1 billion South African rand and secured 640 million rand in property finance. He has experience in residential development, shopping centres, in industrial building and property management of up to 2,000 units. Nelis Engelbrecht is qualified as a chartered accountant. He joined the Old Mutual Group in Group Finance. He was head of Old Mutual South African Capital Management, a member of OMSA Shareholder Investment Committee and the Capital Management Committee as well, the Group Director for Southern Africa Corporate Finance as well, and various other feats in his CV. He has been involved in debt raising of in excess of 10 billion rand. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Welcome on stage both Daniel Lombard and Nelis Engelbrecht. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much, firstly, for your time. My name is Lombard. I'm from the Assist Group. It's a privilege to be here. First of all, I want to just thank ICANN South Africa for really walking the journey with us to where we are today. I think it was really, you can really rely on them to help us and understand the Islamic finance side of things, especially the board as well. I want to thank them in this process. They've really assisted us to understand the products, and I think our esteemed panelists yesterday actually helped us as well to really get a good understanding of what it's about. I think the heart of what we do and in practice will be seen in what we want to present today. And just want to thank everybody for the opportunity and trust that you are here and have spent your time. It's our most valuable asset. So if you've done that already, you are busy to create returns already. So I hope that what we will present to you today will also speak to what we saw yesterday in the morning and understood what real impact investment means. And that is the heart of our organization, or the two organizations in this case, and looking forward to share this with you. Yeah, so impact investment in real estate. I think the panelists yesterday have done it very well, explained it very well, making a real impact in social as well as the planet part of it. In our case, we are more focused on the social impact that we are making with what we do. So I will jump into this immediately and start to explain what is impact real estate investment for the Assist Group and Turning Point. Specifically, we are in the real estate market, helping the impaired or the distressed, as we call it in South Africa, real estate owners in the process, and want to touch on a few specific things around that. First of all, it is an intrinsic part of our business model to make measurable impact in the lives of real estate owners. So I think everybody that knows the distressed industry in the real estate, we understand that there's a lot of misuse of people's unfortunate situations where people are mostly trying to capture that specific property or whatever for as low as possible in the market and make as much profit as possible. Unfortunately, especially when we look at the auction industry or we speak more on the bank side, on the sale and execution basis, that is really a big challenge that we found in the industry. I think there's lately a lot of legislation that's also starting to address that, which is fantastic. But I think it comes from collectively from the financial institutions as well as the investors, and everybody makes the decisions on the principle what was actually discussed yesterday. Then we can understand that there is substantially better ways of doing that. So that is really an intrinsic part of our model. The objective is to assist that property owner, provide peace of mind during the process, whilst busy recovering, and on the end of the day, as we heard yesterday, have an intertwined profit together with making impact socially in that specific, and stop the breakdown or prevent the breakdown of social fabric in those people's lives. Yeah, then impact investing with us specifically refers to investments made into property with the intention to help financially impaired real estate owners who is recoverable. So we have got basically two product lines, if I can call it that, or structured product solutions that we have. And those solutions are based either on recoverable clients, and obviously most of our applicants that come to us with the idea of wanting to keep my home, which is understandable, which we also are focusing on to do that. The unfortunate thing is that some people's situation is in such a state that it's not recoverable. And in that case, we stop legal action, auctions, all those type of things, and then assist that client to improve his property, maximize his proceeds in the process, and make sure that that is assisting them on that basis. Now, positive impact seeks a change in how the whole of the finance sector collectively can create financial and social benefits. I believe that a lot of our panelists yesterday as well referred to that. I think that there needs to be a substantial mind shift of how we approach these matters. When people are in distress, I think through the COVID pandemic period, we have seen what impact that actually had on a lot of people's lives. If we look at how many people's, unfortunately there was legislation that stopped sale and executions, otherwise I would think it would have went through the roof. Then that participation needs to come, I believe, in everybody in this value chain. And that means from the moment that a mortgage starts running in arrears, it's the quicker we get to the point where we can actually address the challenge is going to affect the cost. You know, when it goes to an auction, a lot of things happen, a lot of legal costs, auction costs, etc., which actually makes it very expensive for the real estate owner, and he's losing a lot of equity in the process, which we want to avoid. Yes, and then we look at what was the call yesterday. You know, the call yesterday was that let's look for companies, and that's exactly what I believe that we all should do, to drive this and make this mind shift and actually make it practical in the marketplace. It's the only way to do that is that we have to select how and who we work with and who makes a difference. And if we look at in the industry standard of this specific industry worldwide, we have a serious problem. The industry is getting trained literally worldwide how to actually find vulnerable people, misuse their current situation, and enrich themselves. That's, if you look at the market, especially the US market, it's got a lot of focus on that. In South Africa, there's quite a few companies doing that as well, training you how to actually buy property from people in distress and actually do it at such a low price. And there's somebody that pays a price for that. You know, and I think there's better ways to do that. So look for companies that actually do this, and the fantastic thing is that with our products, we literally do it in every single transaction. There's always somebody that there's financial benefit as well as training for them, helping them to recover, and also at the same time make an impact in their social life. Right, so I'm going to play a video file just to give you an idea. This is real cases. In this specific case, this case was actually a situation which we brought to the legal team as well as some of the credit of a specific institution, which like I won't mention today. And they basically said to us, look, this guy is literally kind of over the edge. There's no help that we can do. I understand that in the laws, the bank won't help him because there's certain criteria that means it becomes reckless lending, etc. So we understand that, but at least have the cooperation, and we can make a call on the banks, and I can ask those who have got access to the real estate investor magazine. With last month's issue, we've actually did a write-up or an article about the call for banks and financial institutions and all those involved in this value chain to actually participate in resolving these issues. So enjoy it, and you'll...
What does impact investment with us look like in real life? Collectively.
So we can leave up the sound.
We create value by assisting the banks, other short-term lending institutions, and its clients in monetizing their impaired financial assets. This is a real-world scenario of the impact on people in distress. The homeowners are married in community of property, and the husband is responsible for payment of the bond. The business operated by the husband is not profitable due to COVID-19 and fell in arrears with mortgage bond payments, municipal rates, taxes, and usage. Critical maintenance was required to avoid damage of the property. The homeowner utilized large sums of unsecured short-term debt to try and address the challenge for their business and arrears. The mortgage bondholder took judgment with a sale in execution scheduled within 60 days, which provided a threat to the family's social fabric. They required time to rehabilitate their credit status to re-enter the mortgage market again. The husband needed time to secure stable and consistent income from the business whilst retaining occupancy of the property. So what is the potential outcome without the assistance of the Turning Point Property Group solution? The bank will sell their house on an auction, setting up the bond and recouping legal costs, auction fees, and outstanding balance repayments, leaving the family without a home still in debt to the bank and creditors. The family will be left in a state of disaster. The wife and the children need to then move back in with her parents, and financial distress will drive her to divorce her husband. The husband's state of mind can be affected and lead to depression, and he can even start contemplating suicide. In most cases, the family's social fabric is completely broken down. This is the outcome for the real estate owner with the Turning Point Property Group solution. The home was sold to the investor at less than market value to settle the existing mortgage, and they unlocked additional equity to settle the short-term debt at discounted settlement amounts. We fixed the critical maintenance, which added value to the property, and with assistance from the Assist Group, we were able to stop the scheduled auction, which would have sold at a fraction of the real value. They entered into a rental agreement, an option linked to a lease, to retain occupancy of the property. This also provided time for the business to recover whilst having peace of mind and a stable environment for the family. The Financial Courage Program assisted the owner to recover and repair credit status and repurchase his home at the discounted value, utilizing the normal mortgage from an institution again. This is the summary of the results through the Turning Point Property Group and the Nasr Impact Sukuk solution. The sale and execution was averted after the sale to an investor. The arrear rates and debt settled from the proceeds unlocked after transfer to the investor. The rental agreement and option fees were paid for the entire period of the transaction. The option linked to the lease was exercised by the owner to purchase the property at a discounted value, providing a stable environment to recover. We then paid the predetermined contractual returns to the investor.
What did that look like in monetary terms? If we look at that, the property at that stage was valued at about 1.65 million. Current bond was 510,000. Maintenance that was required for the critical maintenance was about 79,000. Arrear rates and taxes was 59,000 with arrears already. The short-term debt 550. That's where the problem started. Is when the person got into the position, started making use of short-term debt, unsecured debt, which has actually put him in a position where it just goes down the spiral. And if you look at that figures there, you can actually understand why the bank department said to us that there's no way to help those clients. But with structured property transactions, you don't fall under the same laws. Basically, we do a property transaction, and the investor purchased that property for 1.1 million. That unlocked certain capital to settle short-term debt. Obviously, was discounted rates, which we utilized because we negotiated those things. Then we have the financial courage. It's got a company, Financial Courage, who actually takes the person, get his credit score back to normal, and put him in a position to do that. The market value had increased. As we know, the low capital growth over the last period of time, this was in Gauteng, this was approximately 5% per annum, plus the value add of the maintenance brought the market value to 1.95, 1915. The mortgage was then increased when the client his credit score was recovered, and he purchased the property back at 1.28 million, which that value at that stage was 1,915,000. His expenses on the mortgage was at that stage 12,000 rand a month, and we acted like his monthly income didn't even increase, and it was now changed to a status where income is 17,900 in credit. So that, looking at that, it can be done. People are, in a lot of situations, people are not in the position or educated to actually understand how to do that, and part of that process of financial courage is to train them in that financial wisdom. Like some of the panelists yesterday said, it's great you can do certain things, just be a headache pill on the end of the day, or we can actually take the person, train them so that they never end up in that position again. Part of that is a mental process, specifically, we don't call it spiritual or whatever, but it's basically skills trained to those people to make sure that they get out of it. People don't take a day to get into a negative situation. It takes time to get to what this guy's position was in. But it also takes time and courage and work to get that client to that state where he gets out of that hole in his mind. Because you can change the physical, but you still have to change the outlook from that, and that's our heart of the organization in this case. What did it really cost the owner on the end of the day? Net equity was 531 in the beginning. It increased over the term. The income was already discussed. The investor earned a return of 80% per annum. ROI at a 67% exposure to market value, which is very good security in the process. The client was standing to lose his property, and on the end of the day, we were able to help him to keep his home, and that is the principle of that. And I think that's one case, as an example. Obviously, every case is different, and it works differently. But if we look at what is the need out there in the South African property market, I'm going to touch on the credit consumers first. The current status is that of the 25 million credit consumers, 10.8 million of them are impaired in some way that actually don't allow them to buy a property today through a mortgage. That I don't want to lay that in front of the banks, but the banks have to take some responsibility for that, because the previously disadvantaged people was when that happened, people were provided unsecured debt whilst they were restricted when it comes to mortgages. And that changed a lot of that and placed people in a position where they are today. And I want to make a call on the banks specifically that they need to also join the party to rectify the situation. Property ownership in South Africa is a very important part of helping people to belong. Helping people not to go into other avenues and burn buildings and do these things. If you own property, it's good for your health, it's a stable environment for people and a family, and that's what we're looking for. We have got certain specific products which speaks about helping those clients that we're talking about, these 10 million people who needs to get into homes. For those who don't own homes in there, they can be recovered. There's about a very large percentage of them are actually recoverable within 12 to 24 months if they are managed and trained through that process and helped to get their credit score rectified and help them to get into a product. Now, we buy those products as part of our strategy. We buy those products at discounted values and help those clients then to become what we call a assist-to-own product that we have, and register that into the fund or the investment vehicle, and they will rent with a purpose to take transfer within 12 to 24 months. Then secondly, we look at our current status of regular residential mortgages. Large part of our industry, 90 days or more. If we take the total arrears on mortgages, it's on residential loans, it's about 68.9 billion rand. So I don't know if we can muster that together here, but that is the size of the market. Obviously, if we start looking at that market and help those 107,000 or some part of that our goal in the next period of time is to actually see if we can address only 2% in a year of that, which you can work out for yourself, needs substantial investment to do that. Okay, I think I don't have to say that. There's a compelling case for investing in impaired and distressed property in South Africa. The purpose is to introduce the financiers today and debt investors, partners, to partner with us as Turning Point Group as well as Assist Group to really change that current status of the market. Our capital raising and returns, which Nelis will share a bit more about the structures and how we're going to do that, is initially speaking about 500 million at least as a runway for larger funding. We know this is a global issue. After we launched in South Africa and did it and scaled in South Africa, we would obviously the same offering will move to other parts of the world where the same challenges lie. Assist Group have proven their concept over the last 8 years. We basically have tested all the products. We have improved our contracts. I'm always laughing when I look at those that I did 8 years ago, when I look at them today. We have burnt our fingers, understood where the challenges lies. So I think at this stage we are in a position where we are scaling and we are looking for investment to do that in a proper manner. But I think all our products is basically at this stage being tested in the market and proven. The Assist Group is also got a few operating subsidiaries which also grew through this time with specific needs which we understand. Like for instance what you talk about, the financial courage that came involved later in the process, because we've tried various third-party service providers, but there's not a lot of people that really got the heart to want to take a person, because it's not an easy task to take a person in his financial as well as has his mental status and his skills to actually get him to that point where he can actually be positive and change this, because you need a winning real estate owner that wants to change before you can actually assist him. Then we also do the due diligence, the risk assessment, the asset management during the period, measurable behavior change. We literally measure everything on that. The mortgage origination is in-house. We contract the insurance through the process, sales facilitation of those properties. So literally the whole value chain is covered through the Assist Group and its various subsidiaries that's involved. Yes, then real estate assist is just to touch quickly on that. The real estate assist is the part that works with the real estate owner and do the origination. Turning Point Group, as well as Wealth Assist, is our investment side of our subsidiaries, and Realty Management is doing our asset management and rentals. Legal complaint, we also found through this process to do a normal transfer for an attorney and do a distress transfer is totally different things. And we had to do and created the necessary entity to actually facilitate that in a proper manner. Then financial courage, probably the most important part of our business, changing people and actually do a proper behavior analytics, which we can prove and tested that can be shown, and they show the impact that we are really making on the internet. From my side, sorry Nelis, I give you very little time left, but thank you, appreciate your time, and stay blessed.